Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 46 of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I speak to the founder of Pope Chiropractic. Please welcome Dr. Ray Pope. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I got to speak to Dr. Ray Pope, who is the founder of Pope Chiropractic and has been my chiropractor since I was about 5 years old. So known him for quite a while. And I've been really excited to get him on the podcast because he, not only was he my chiropractor growing up and to this day, but he has also been my science teacher and led many of my science labs throughout high school. And anyways, he's just always been like this person that has always influenced me on the science and understanding of health. And he's done so much study and everything in that. So really excited to get him on the podcast, especially during this time. Not specifically COVID related, but in health related of general keeping up with keeping your body healthy, keeping your mind healthy. So we actually go through some things, some key principles that he believes chiropractic really follows, such as like the 5 keys of health, as well as BAM, an acronym which stands for balance, agility, and movement. So anyways, we get into all that and more. And lastly, his son, Dr. Zach Pope, now also works with him in the chiropractic business. So we talk a little bit about that. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Ray Pope. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I have the founder of Pope Chiropractic. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Ray Pope.
Hi, Brandon.
Hey,
good to be here.
Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh, yeah.
So before we get started with everything, tell us a little about Dr. Ray.
Well, where do you want to begin? There's a lot. I've been around for almost 60 years, so.
Well, where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Rochester, New York, so I'm a New Yorker by born and bred. And however, I got smart and I left when I was 18, and I never looked back.
What was it like growing up over there?
Very matter of fact. You know, around here, people tend to be a lot more sensitive of other people's feelings, and in New York, you know, that's kind of not as important, I guess. So you get so you recognize that at least people are very honest with their feelings, where some other places in the world, it doesn't seem like people are, you know, willing to speak out what they think.
Right. I wonder why that is, if it's just the intensity of New York or what it is that causes that.
I don't have the answer to that one. It is different, though.
Yeah.
And I like it better out here.
Okay, very cool. So do you have a lot of like friends that you had in high school and stuff that still live over in Rochester?
Yeah, I do. I have. I went back to my 40th high school reunion last year, and it was interesting. A lot of my high school, small high school, 125 people in my class, and
wow,
they were all, most of them, you know, still live back east. Very few of us are smart and came out to the West Coast. So, but it is. I'm glad I moved. We have a much more, you know, there we used to joke that we had 10 months of winter and 2 months of lousy tobogganing.
Yeah, no, the weather over there is not exactly, I was never over there like up that far north, but like just being there for just as it started to heat up, man, that was just killer.
Yeah, summers are rough, and humidity's high, and mosquitoes are prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah.
We live in the eternal spring here, and back east, you get 3 days of spring.
Yep. Oh, very cool. All right. So, when did you get interested in, like, throughout high school and stuff? Was there anything that kind of drew you to the interest of becoming a doctor? Was it from family or education?
Yeah, I always, when I was a kid, I liked the ambulances driving by, and I thought, I'd love to be an ambulance driver. And, everybody wants to either be a firefighter or an ambulance driver, at that as a child. So when I got into college, I had the opportunity, I was a biology major, and I had the opportunity to become an EMT. And so I got nationally registered as an EMT and worked for about 3.5 years on ambulance. So I actually fulfilled my dream while I was going to college.
Oh, very cool. How was that experience for you then?
It was good. It was eye-opening. I realized that most accidents involve alcohol. I don't think that's any big surprise. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, drunk drivers. This is in mostly New Jersey, a little bit in New York, and I'm sure it's the same, or was the same here at the time. This is in the early 80s. And I realized also that if I did pursue a healthcare career, I didn't want to deal with blood and guts and bodily fluids.
Yeah.
So chiropractic was the perfect solution for me.
Yeah. So how did you kind of come across chiropractic in your looking at different medical fields?
Well, it was, I wouldn't say it was a direct route, but I quickly started to realize, even when you're talking about, something as simple as getting in a car and driving, that could be a reactive thing for the EMTs and police, or it could be a preventive thing by not getting in the car and driving while you're intoxicated. Mm-hmm. And so I realized very quickly that it's better to prevent than it is to treat.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that's definitely you're on either end of the spectrum of that.
Sure, and chiropractic is, we do have a injury prevention or injury recovery aspect to it. I mean, we deal with a lot of symptoms, headaches, neck pains, low back pain, radiating pain down the leg, sciatic, but there's also a lot of prevention to, increasing resiliency, wellness, restoration, and improved health.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it was something, we moved over here when I was 5, and, we started seeing you guys. It was just you at the time in your house, but, that's my introduction to chiropractic was very early on in life. So that was something that it's continued to be a big part of my life. And it's weird to me when I come across people that haven't even, there's people I come across that have never been to a chiropractor.
Sure. And there's people that still drive drunk.
Yeah. Yes.
So it doesn't mean that, we can change. We can find new ways to stay healthy. And I think that's where chiropractic is, a leading health care industry, if you will. Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time learning about how to create and maintain health and wellness. And so it does lend itself to a real natural approach. We're not doing drugs. We're not doing surgery. We're working with the body and with the structure of the body and the neurological system of the body to help maintain health.
Yeah. So then where did you end up going to school for your chiropractic?
Well, I did all my undergrad back east in New York and West Virginia, and then I went to chiropractic school in South Carolina. There's about a dozen, maybe 15 chiropractic schools in the country. There's a couple in Europe. There's a couple in Australia. There's one in Japan. So I mean, right now, there's probably 20 schools around the world, and they all teach this, the secret knowledge and specialized skill of chiropractic.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting that there's so few schools around the world that teach it. I'm assuming that means like certain countries probably don't actually have any chiropractors in country and stuff.
Actually, it's a uniquely American institution. It was started in 1895. So we've had like 125 years of chiropractic as a profession, and it was originated in Davenport, Iowa. And, so the schools naturally started out as an American institution, and that became the fountainhead of chiropractic worldwide. And so most all of the people who came from other countries studied in the United States, even up until I graduated in 1985 from Sherman College. And that I had probably a dozen Kiwis, those New Zealanders in my class, one Mexican, two people from France. So, it is definitely an international, everybody came to America back then. And now, since there are some other schools around the world, it's spreading.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's more, I've noticed there's more, throughout my life, I guess, I see them more often. Like, I remember trying to find them was sometimes difficult if we went out or were out and about or something like that. And it feels like they're a little bit more common, but I still meet people that haven't done it, so it's weird.
Yep.
Very cool. So then where did you start your career then? So you were in South Carolina. Where did you go from there?
Well, I got licensed in New Jersey, but I knew that I didn't want to live back east. And my wife, we had a young family. I was married and had Zachary, who's now Dr. Zach in the office. And we decided that we wanted to move to the West Coast. And so here we came to Seattle area, and we ended up starting a practice in Edmonds. And that practice is actually still going. I was had a different doctor, two doctors who have taken that one over in the meantime. But I lasted in Edmonds for about 4 years and decided I needed to get out into the country. So I moved my young family, 3 kids and a wife, 2 dogs, a bunch of chickens. And that's when you met me.
Okay.
Up here to Camano. So.
Very cool. So then what was I'm assuming, so when you started the practice down in Edmonds, was that because you couldn't find another practice that you wanted to work with and then under, or was it just was the easiest, it was the best solution at the time?
Yeah, Edmonds seemed to answer us originally, and my wife was interested in midwifery, and so we wanted to keep her close enough that she could go to the Seattle Midwifery School.
Oh, okay.
Down there, and so that's why we loved Edmonds. It was beautiful, and found an office right down near the waterfront, and did very well, very fast, but took on an associate who I was able to sell the office to and still move up here after 4 or 5 years.
Okay, very cool. So then when you guys moved up here, was your plan to obviously you ended up starting another office within your house. Was that kind of like, was that supposed to be a short-term thing, or was your kind of goal to continue to do that for a while?
Yeah, I don't think most people don't know that I did start out of my house, but we go back a long way, Brandon. You were a cute little guy. I don't know, it's one of those things, if you want to make God laugh, make plans for the future. So I suppose, I wanted to get into some, a little gentle farm here. And so we have 5 acres and we do a lot of gardening and we had sheep for a while. We've had chickens for the entire time we've lived here. A little small greenhouse. And I guess living the good life, there was a popular book back in the 80s, and I read it and decided that I needed some room to spread out and improve the quality of life for my kids and my family.
Yeah. What book was that?
I believe it was entitled, like Finding the Good Life or something like.
Okay.
There was a number of them back in the, they were kind of throwback hippie books.
Okay. Yep.
So, yeah. Yep. You'll have to do a Google search sometime. I'm sure they're still in print on Kindle or something.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool. So then, how did you guys, this went back a little bit, but how did you guys discover Camano Island then?
Yeah, I was actually in transition working with a chiropractor in Smoky Point at the time, and on my lunch hours, I would take off and I'd start looking for some acreage, and I ended up crossing the bridge, which was the most dangerous thing. It's like, here I am in another world, and I'm like, it didn't take me long to figure, the boy from New York got one look at Camano Island and decided that was the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I've said this before on the podcast, but it's amazing how many people that I've interviewed, and that is like they've driven on the island and they knew right then that somehow they were going to live here.
Yep.
So that's very cool. So, once you guys, when you were in your house, how long did it take, or when did you guys end up getting the other office that you guys had for a long time?
Mm-hmm. That was actually after about 4 or 5 years. So I seem to have, like every 4 or 5 years, I had to move my office. It was a short move, less than a mile away. So, but it was just too crowded. I got too busy to have it out of my house, and my little kids were riding bikes and playing in the driveway, and the patients were driving in and driving out, and I just felt very uncomfortable with that whole situation. And we had outgrown the small space, so we moved. And then since now, we actually are in our permanent home, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Right next to you, Brandon, right at the Commons.
Yeah.
And we love it there.
Yeah. No,
I say between the Camano Globe and the crab, and the Windermere crab, we're right there in the shadow of the crab.
Yeah. No, I know when you guys were deciding to move here, I was like, perfect. Now, like, I can stop, see the family, see the business, and get adjusted at the same time. And then since started working here, it's been great. I'm like, oh, my back is so out. So I'll run over and find out if you guys have an opening. And the only downside is that you guys have actually become busy enough that I can't just, get in whenever I want.
Yes. And, now with the coronavirus crisis, things have changed where we used to accept walk-ins and that sort of thing. Now it's, of course, by appointment only. We're taking, serious steps to just make sure that everything is perfectly sanitized, and all the providers are wearing masks, and we're washing hands constantly. And so, that part of that is just living in this day and age and dealing with the situation at hand. But with 11 employees, which I am one of them, we have a pretty sensible way of moving forward through this.
Yeah. So how has that been? How has the whole situation kind of affected, I guess, one, the business, but two, how, what are your kind of general thoughts on it?
Mm-hmm. I feel very blessed that I'm able to, stay open. We're both, chiropractic physicians are considered essential. In my book, everybody is essential, so I don't even like that term, but I am happy that we are able to continue to serve our clientele and and the people in the community. We have noticed, of course, quite a drop off initially when a lot of people, didn't have the confidence to even venture out because we didn't really know what we were dealing with or the degree of risk that we were taking. So there's that end of it. So our business certainly dropped precipitously in the first 3 to 4 weeks, and then slowly has started to creep back. And I don't know how far into this we are. It seems like years, but we are certainly the number of people that we're serving has increased, not to normal levels, but we're getting closer.
Right. So then kind of along those same lines, what are kind of the best steps for us to take as I guess, as a community, to continue to fight against COVID-19?
That's actually one of the reasons why I was excited to be on your podcast, Brandon, is because I see that, there certainly is a time and a place to focus on disease and sickness. Although when we do focus on disease and sickness, it is by definition a reactive method. Yeah. And what chiropractic, I think, in essence, is meant to do is to be very proactive, focus not on sickness but on health. And so moving forward, as now that we can kind of look at the science and at the statistics, the valid statistics that are out there, and put things into perspective, I think we're seeing that now is a great time, and it's always a great time to focus on health. And we talk about the 5 keys to health, and I'd love to share those with you and your listeners. Yeah. And that way, people can say, oh, you know what, I'm ready to move on with life. I want to make sure that my health is optimized because that makes sense to me. And it doesn't matter whether it's COVID-19 or influenza A or any other diseases, even the chronic diseases that kill so many people, heart disease and cancers, and we're still talking huge numbers that far exceed anything that we are seeing with this coronavirus crisis. Right. So staying healthy should be the goal of every person. Avoiding disease, yeah, that's important, but staying healthy, I think, is far more important. So the 5 keys that we talk about constantly in our office. Of course, spinal health is the essence of chiropractic. We want to make sure that our nerve system's functioning properly. We want to make sure that structurally our joints are working right. Posture is important. Full oxygenation with good joint and posture function is essential for health from a spinal standpoint. And that is certainly the essence of chiropractic. It's what we do most of, but we also deal with nutrition. That's another component. We encourage people to, eat healthy foods. You definitely can make yourself sick by eating the wrong things. And therefore you can make yourself healthy by eating the right things. So whole foods, we do some targeted supplements in the office, but most of those are available to people who have an interest in just staying healthy. We talk a lot about vitamin D, the omega-3 essential fatty acids, just good whole food nutrition, basically. And then hydration, of course, is another thing that's super important for health, and so many people don't even think about it. We spend a lot of time drinking coffee, which actually is a diuretic, and as much as it's delicious, and Camano Island coffee is my go-to. Is that a good shameless plug for you?
That was great.
Okay, good. Whatever I can do. So, as much as coffee is wonderful, we're drinking not enough water. And so we do want to make sure that hydration, it's essential. It's very inexpensive too. So I encourage people to drink, plenty of water.
Yeah. And you can make it zero waste. You can have your own water bottle and fill it up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those keys to health that gets overlooked, and it's one of the simplest things that you can do.
Yeah.
Along those same lines is, proper rest, sleep, good sleep. These are all essential for recovery. Mental attitude is going to be another key. We talk a lot about positive, PMA, positive mental attitude. I think it goes beyond that. I like to think about health aspects of the positive outlook, certainly, but also mindfulness, and then spiritual certainty, especially in times. Last time I looked, everybody will at least die at some point. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be stupid and do things that are reckless, whether we're dealing with a virus or a car. Right. But we also recognize that it's going to happen at some point that we will die. Yeah. So having an attitude of saying, okay, how can I live as healthy as I can until that point is really important.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, we talk a lot about movement, which we use the acronym BAM, which stands for balance, agility, and movement. And so we're talking, those things are essential for, the dance of life, so to speak.
Yeah. Movement. So just recapping real quick, the 5 keys, because it was interspersed throughout it. Could you just again, real quick, list the 5 keys again?
Sure. I'll start with spinal health, nutrition, sleep, movement, and attitude.
Sleep, movement, attitude. Got it. Very cool. And then through that, then you guys have continued to build the business has continued to expand outside of just chiropractic. Is that moving in those directions of hitting and maintaining those 5 keys?
Yes, you just had a peek into our business model. So it's an umbrella, and it's all wellness. We definitely our motto is injury recovery and wellness restoration for children and adults.
Okay. Very cool. So then what are some ways that we can be kind of working towards those different keys during this time then?
Well, now everybody has all the time in the world. Mm-hmm. It seems like. So a lot of people are doing the right thing. They're getting into their gardens and growing food. You can't get any fresher than what you picked that morning and eat that afternoon. And, we're getting a lot of fresh air, sunshine. That's where the vitamin D, it's better to get it absorbed into our skin naturally than it is to take a supplement. But unfortunately, one of the things of living in an area where we do have eternal spring is not enough sun enough of the year. Yeah. So that means supplements are kind of the way that we have to add vitamin D to our system. So there are times, between certain periods where the sun angle is out and we can take a shirt off or something and have some skin exposed and actually get natural vitamin D. And then obviously movement, we want to make sure our joints are working right so we can get out there and walk in the state parks now that they're all open.
Yeah.
And it's just building strength, building balance, increasing ability. Those are all things that are important to children, and they also are even more important to adults as we age, because if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Yeah, we've been, I'm now 31, but trying to, I played soccer throughout my life, and definitely in the last few years, it's been more apparent. I mean, even in the last 5 years, really, like actually having to stretch before playing and stretching afterwards and doing cool down, doing warm up, and seeing significant difference in doing those things. But I want to continue to play soccer so that I can continue to play longer, later in life. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the things that's so important about improving our health in any way we can. We start to do the thing. We are allowing our bodies to actually continue to do the things that we love to do, and increasing our ability to be active with our children and grandchildren and being able to participate fully with someone else that we love,
Mm-hmm.
And life is not about staying inside. Life is about getting out and relating to other people. And I think that's where a lot of people are kind of waking up to that idea, because we're starting to see families that have been going in every different direction. All of a sudden, now they're all home together. And they're having to figure it out. Yeah. And so they're doing things like planting gardens and playing board games. And I mean, there's some wonderful aspects to what we have experienced in the last 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's been, and I've tried to focus on that in my other podcasts around COVID-19, things like that, is, some of the positive aspects that we've seen going on in our community, and things like that, because of the effect of COVID.
Right.
So, all right, very cool. So we kind of touched on this earlier, and I want to interview him as well. But I did want to go back a little bit and talk on, you've been working with Dr. Zach now for quite a few years now. How did that kind of evolve over time, and how did that kind of decision come into play to bring him on to work with you?
Yeah, it's kind of I would love to say that it was all planned from the beginning, but none of it was. And you were friends with Zach's younger sibling, his brother, probably more than with Zach. But at one point, he wanted to become a pilot, if I remember correctly, and I think at a certain point he realized that his vision was not perfect enough to go into that discipline.
Yeah.
And so he played around. He got a bachelor's degree in Spanish and then got one in biology and became a chiropractor. So all through chiropractic school, he went down to the University of Western States in Oregon, and he never suggested that he might come up here and practice with me. And he is a surfer, and I imagined he was going out almost every other weekend going surfing. And so, to tell you the truth, I figured he'd get an Oregon license or a California license and go and find a little sleepy beach community and practice and then surf when the surf was up.
Yeah.
But in his last year of chiropractic school, he had already taken all of the boards, and he came to me and he said, "Hey, Dad, do you have room in your office for me?" And of course, I'm like, it doesn't matter whether I have room, I will make room, because the idea of having him we get along very well, and I can honestly say we still have after, I don't know, I think 9, maybe going on 10 years of working together. And so it has rekindled my interest in health and wellness, and I was probably now I see it more as a legacy, that I can pass on to Dr. Zach, and he is actually taking over. I'm almost the secondary doctor in the office now. Well, I am.
Okay.
He does most all the decision making. He still asks for my counsel quite a bit, but for the most part, this is a new business, or this is a new chiropractic office. It's not the one that you saw 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool, and I definitely have some sort of understanding of that, because within my transition to where I am now, none of that was planned either. That was, my dad had sent me on my own trajectory as an engineer, and
you're using that engineering degree, aren't you?
Yeah,
every day
for sure.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
It's I think there's a great. I think one of the things, especially when it comes to family business and stuff, there's definitely there's additional things that go along with it. But at the end of the day, you get to work in a business with the people that you love and care about most. And there's just so much benefit to that outweighs the downside.
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
and if you can do it on Camano Island in Washington State, all the better.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. So the first one is, do you have a lesser known or favorite location on Camano Island that you like to hang out?
Yes, I do. I enjoy what we used to call the DNR land. I think it's called Ridge Park, Camano Ridge Park now.
Okay.
And you get to it off of the Ridge Road, or you can get to it from Cancun. And it's just beautiful, quiet forest, and there's a system of trails that makes it pretty easy to go about 4 miles if you want to, and it's super easy to get lost, so a lot of people never go back. Either that, or maybe they just get lost and they never find home. I don't know, but it's always quiet when I go up there.
Okay. Very cool. That's a new one. I don't think anyone's mentioned that one yet. So, all right. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town, not during this period of time, but during hopefully more normal times. What would their first day look like here?
Well, they would get Camano Island coffee right off of the, freshly ground and brewed. So that's just a given. And then we would sit and we'd talk with coffee in the early morning for a long time. And when it got warm enough, we'd go and check out the garden. And then I might take them to see my beehives.
Ah, very cool.
I know you interviewed a wonderful beekeeper not too long ago.
Yeah.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
So I'm not doing things anywhere near to the scale, but man, she is amazing.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting learning a lot about that bees and how to keep them healthy and maintain them and everything. So very interesting.
Very interesting.
Nice. Very cool. Who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next? All right. And then lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island right as you're driving up the hill, what would that say?
The New York in me would say, turn around and go back.
I'll
just leave it at that.
You turned away from those ways.
Yes, I have.
Well, very cool. Thank you again so much for joining me on the podcast today and taking the time to talk with me.
You're welcome, Brandon. It's been my pleasure.
All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Dr. Ray Pope for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, go to CamanoCommons.com/EP46. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP46. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.